Breaking news from the Justice Department. A New York federal court is charging Thomas Barrack, a longtime friend of former President Trump's, with acting as an agent of a foreign government. The 74-year-old private equity investor and two other defendants are accused of illegally lobbying U.S. officials on behalf of the United Arab Emirates. Barrack served as the chair of Mr. Trump's 2017 inaugural fund. The DOJ says Barrack acted as an agent of the UAE between 2016 and 2018. Let's bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe now. Hi, Ed. So what more do we know about this indictment and the specific charges Barrack faces?
Sure. Look, it's a 45-page indictment here that was just issued a little while ago. Barrack resides in Los Angeles, and so he was taken into custody there in California. As you said, a 7-count indictment that retells here in various ways at times that he allegedly was trying to influence both the Trump campaign and then the Trump administration on behalf of the United Arab Emirates. When you're doing something like that, you have to register as a foreign agent with the Justice Department to make clear that you are lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. That's essentially what he did not do, according to this indictment. He also apparently lied to federal investigators about all of this in a 2019 interview. Barrack is probably best remembered to everyday Americans as the guy who was the chairman of the inaugural committee back in 2017, somebody who had been trying to get an ambassadorship at various points during the Trump years, but that didn't pan out, and somebody who used to do business work with Trump when he was focused primarily on real estate back in the 1980s and 1990s, someone who had sort of helped buoy the Trump organization at one time or another. But this is now another big name in the Trump presidential and campaign orbit who has been now dragged in by federal investigators and has now been indicted on various charges. You can add him to the list that includes Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, and most recently Alan Weisselberg, the gentleman who helped run the Trump organization. Remember, some of those gentlemen were pardoned by then President Trump. Others are still tied up in court, Weisselberg and now Tom Barrack especially.
And Ed, do we know how serious these charges are in terms of what sorts of repercussions, if he is found guilty of them, that he may face?
I am no legal expert, Tanya, but I would think that there's at least a few years of prison time tied to this if he were to be convicted, or even if there were some kind of a settlement. This is a pretty serious charge. And again, over these 45 pages, outlines through text messages, emails that were sent, attempts to influence the Trump administration by getting the president to mention the UAE in speeches and other work that he was trying to do during the campaign to get the campaign to focus on policy that was favorable to the United Arab Emirates. This is something that has tripped up other folks here in Washington before. Sometimes it's dealt with as a sort of paperwork mishap or a misunderstanding. This one appears to be a little more serious, given that they have the text messages and the documents, and we'll wait to see what Mr. Barrack has to say for himself and whether there's any response from the former president himself as well. He's been asked in recent weeks about the case involving the Trump organization and issues various statements saying it's all part of the ongoing witch hunt. We'll see if that's the case here as well.
Right. And you mentioned how, most Americans know him as, leading the inaugural fund in 2017. But can you tell us more about his relationship to the former president? Do they go back? Is there something beyond that?
Well, like I said, he was one of the former president's closest associates during the campaign and in office, was one of those that was on the phone with the president a lot late at night, or you would read news reports about, friends and associates close to the president say whatever. Well, Barrack was one of those friends and associates who was being quoted on a fairly regular basis because he was in touch with reporters trying to convey what the president was thinking. And again, they did work together back in the 90s. Barrack had been involved in helping keep the Trump organization afloat. And he, too, was a real estate investor, as was Mr. Trump. So, somebody that originally had business ties with the former president, obviously developed political ties since they both got involved in national politics, and one of those that was close enough to the president that he was helping to convey his thoughts on a fairly regular basis in the press. So this is another blow and another example of the FBI and the Justice Department continuing to investigate allegations of wrongdoing surrounding the former president, his political and his business operations, and a reminder, if we needed one, that the investigations continue and are likely to continue to reveal information, if not directly about the former president, but certainly about people around him for quite some time to come.
Ed O'Keefe at the White House, thank you so much.